was a crime that shocked the Pacific Northwest and reverberated across the country. In 1983, Diane Downs, a woman living in Springfield, Oregon, drove her children ages 8, 7, and 3 out of town and did the unthinkable.
She looked them right in the eye and shot them.
If my children had not been with me that night, they would not be dead and injured.
I can 100% tell you she's right on that one. Y'all, Diane Downs, honey, she ain't changed one bit, okay? And she is locking into the same story and even trying to make up new stories and take left turns on old stories. You name it. Now, what's happened recently with the Diane Downs case is Diane Downs went for another parole hearing. It's like 4.5 hours, something like that. It was crazy long, right? Of just your standard Diane Downs BS. What we're going to do in this video is we are going to basically summarize it and talk about some of the highlights. And through that, we'll revisit aspects of the case, the lies, all the above that she's done over the last however many decades, okay? You're definitely going to want your true crime blankie. You're definitely going to want to buckle up. Don't hold any large objects in your hand for fear of throwing them at the TV screen or whatever you're watching today, okay? So, with that being said, go ahead, get ready, and let's buckle up and jump into today's video.
Hey, 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 welcome to the Sofa Squad, sipping from the cup at hey.
Now hold on everybody, let's do a quick sofa sidebar now. Keep in mind, ain't no cop, ain't no doctor, ain't no lawyer, ain't no therapist, ain't none of that fancy credentialed stuff, okay? Only credentials we got up in here is my sass, and this sofa. Now keep in mind also, I'm just giving my opinions on very public information, so do your own research, come to your own opinions, and drop them off in the comment section. And while you're down there, if you do like what you see here at the Sofa Squad, drop a little like, drop a little comment, drop a little share. It helps the channel out immensely. Now let's get edition. Okay y'all, confession time. If you follow me, you already know I love all the yummy ooey gooey stuff. Pastries, cookies, bread, you name it. But if I had to make it from start to finish, y'all would be eating burnt toast and disappointment. That is why I am obsessed with Wildgrain. It's all bakery quality stuff. We're talking croissants, we're talking bread, we're talking pastries, we're talking cookies, you name it. And it comes out perfect every time. So this month's box hit at the perfect time. My cousin was visiting for the High Point Furniture Market, so I got to play the little professional, like cozy host, okay? And I got to surprise her every morning with, biscuits, cookies, bread at dinner, you name it. We made cranberry rolls, croissants, apple turnovers, and my absolute favorite were the ginger molasses cookies. I have been rationing them out, but I'm not gonna lie y'all, I totally pulled a binge on those things. Wildgrain puts such care into the ingredients as well as the artisans who make their stuff. Wildgrain gives you all the sourdough benefits without the hard work, okay? Unlike store-bought stuff, they use a slow fermentation process that's easier on your belly, richer in nutrients, and antioxidants. They can even help lower blood sugar spikes. One of my absolute favorite parts with this that makes me feel like a super fancy bakery chef or whatever is it is from freezer to your table in 25 minutes or less. You're also supporting some of the best small bakeries in the country. Every box helps small businesses that use responsible sourcing so you get to feel good while you're eating good. Also, another favorite thing of mine is that Wildgrain is very customizable. You can build your own box with new seasonal and limited time items each month. Also, they're out there doing good. For every box ordered, 2 meals are donated to a nonprofit of your choice, no extra cost. And you can't go wrong with free croissants for life, okay? They are amazing. So whether you're wanting to feel fancy for your guests like me, or just like a little treat to round out your meals, or a little snack time, or whatever it is, Wildgrain has you covered from the freezer to the table, 25 minutes or less, and free croissants for life. I mean, come on. So if you want to check out Wildgrain, which I think you should do, click the link in the description below. Use my code SOFASQUAD. That's going to get you $30 off of your first box. And yes, wait for it, free croissants for life. Don't miss out. Don't sleep on this one. Hello, Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa. It's a sofa. It's a pillow. It's a button. This is Paul. My name is Paul if you're new to the channel, and if you're not new to the channel, my name's still Paul. Okay. Now, I already told you what we're going to be doing, so we're going to jump in. There's going to be a few clips to watch from this, but mostly we're just going to be talking, going over some of the highlights and revisiting aspects of the case. So let's go ahead and just jump on in. So to do a quick overview for those who might not be completely familiar with the case, Diane Downs was convicted in 1984 for shooting her 3 young children on a rural road outside of Springfield, Oregon in May 1983. Her 7-year-old daughter Cheryl died at the scene, while her other 2 children, Danny and Christy, were critically injured but survived. Downs told investigators that a shaggy-haired stranger flagged her down and opened fire during an attempted carjacking. But her story, as you can imagine, quickly unraveled. Evidence, including blood splatter, gunshot residue, and her daughter Christy's later testimony identifying her as the shooter, pointed back to her. Prosecutors argued she shot the children to free herself for a romantic relationship with a coworker who didn't want kids. Downs was convicted of murder, attempted murder, and assault, and sentenced to life plus 50 years. She later escaped prison in 1987, but was recaptured in 10 days later, and since then has repeatedly been denied parole. Now, over the years, she has maintained her innocence, claiming suppressed evidence and conspiracies, while her surviving children were adopted by the prosecutor who tried her case. So that's a very quick overview. We're going to be obviously diving deeper in as we go along. So let's start talking about some of the things that took place at the parole. Now, first of all, like I said, this is the Oregon Parole Board, and this was the consideration for her, letting her out on parole. Now, there's 3 things that were going on here. So they outlined the legal question. Number 1, is she no longer dangerous? Number 2, is she still dangerous but manageable with supervision? Or 3, is she dangerous with a deferral? So let's go ahead and talk about some of the things that she went over in her hopes of getting out. One of those things was money, work, release readiness, all these type of things they want to know that can you do and are you doing them to be able to integrate back into society. Now, she has about $250 in her prison account. Her mom sends her like $400 every 3 to 4 months. Now, she works as a porter from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. 5 days a week. She makes 16 cents an hour. That's $20 a month. And she said that she volunteers in the mornings to help others, like with laundry, cleaning, supplies, stuff like that. She described herself as retired by age, but still very active. Now, as far as her health and mental health goes, she doesn't really have any major health issues. She did have a knee replacement about a year and a half ago. Now, let's get into some of her prior things that she said, her credibility, all this type stuff. And let's start with some of those allegations about her father. So when they probed her about prior statements that her father had abused her, she now fully recants that and says it never happened. She claims that her defense attorney insisted she allow that claim into the record to make other denials seem more credible. She does admit that she lied under oath on that point and says counsel made her do it. She also alleges that the prosecutor offered testimony that they knew was false and that multiple witnesses gave false testimony contradicting hospital notes. She also says that the court excluded her son's, quote, mean man statements and that potential exculpatory evidence, such as fingerprints, DNA on guns, stuff like that, was not pursued or was withheld. Now, let's go ahead and listen to her talking specifically about the issue with her father and her previous statements and what he did or did not do.
And I guess I'm confused because there are reports where you say that your father sexually abused you, and then you later recant those claims. So what is that? I mean, did your father sexually abuse you? And if he did not, why did you tell people he had?
My dad did not abuse me. He did not abuse anybody in my family. My attorney said, Susan Staffel of Children's Services wants to talk to you about the molestation. And I said, what molestation? He said, Steve said to Susan Staffel that you were molested. I said, I was not. He says, well, you're going to have to address that. And I said, that's easy. It didn't happen. He said, you can't just tell Susan Staffel you weren't molested, because then it sounds like I didn't have a gun. I didn't do the shooting. I didn't get molested. I didn't. You have to admit something. That way, when you say I didn't, then you're more believable. I said, but none of it is true.
I already literally was like starting to fall out just for that little bit of her, because this is the thing that Diane does. She has these intricate stories for all of the stuff that's happened and that she's done over the years. And it's not just oh, well, this is why that's not true now. It's here's this, and let me create chaos. Let me create confusion. Let me create all sorts of nonsense to distract away from the fact that I'm lying and I have been lying, and make things up and change the story and then have to make up lies to cover lies. It is exhausting. Now, when this took place, Diane drove her children to the hospital. However, there was another driver who was behind her and said that she was going intentionally super slow. Now, her behavior only got stranger. Reports from the staff of the hospital about her behavior said she didn't appear frantic or really upset. She was actually more concerned about her own injury to her arm that we would later find out she caused. She also seemed flirtatious at times, and she even complained that her new car now had blood all over it. Now, when asked about these things in the hearing, this is what Diane had to say. So she reflects on her emotional control that she's learned. She says that she learns to stay calm in crises, like the hospital after the shooting, and to make others feel safe, okay? She claims this self-imposed caretaker instinct is called codependency in prison programs. Now, she talks about this behavior in the hospital and relates it back to that. So she says that she didn't cry or panic because she wanted to keep detectives calm. She claims that the nurses recorded her as a mother in shock, but that detail never made headlines. She says she's also learned boundaries, and she's also learning not to overextend herself. She has a little motto that she teaches others, and I'll quote her: "If I didn't break you, it's not my job to fix you," end quote. So you see how she comes up with all this stuff. I mean, she's had decades to do this, right? So there's no denying that when you look back at her interviews, you look back at the testimony about her behavior in the hospital, this is not normal. This is not how somebody acts whose children were just shot in a car, okay, during a failed carjacking, right? Now, we clearly know that she did it at this point, but she has an excuse for every little part. And I think it was Georgia and the Donna Adelson case that was like talking about how cumbersome it is when you have an excuse for every little thing. The simplest answer is most often the real answer, but not when it comes to like Charlie Adelson and him running his mouth. And the same can be said for Diane Downs. Now, about the suppressed evidence and these new allegations about this, let's talk about this. So she reiterates that claims from earlier that the prosecutors, detectives, everybody basically, even her defense attorney, withheld or destroyed evidence. She cites a 1998 subpoena that produced 4,700 withheld documents, including one reporting that someone allegedly called police and said, quote, "We know who shot the Downs children," end quote, and named a Free Soul affiliate. She says this phone call was never followed up and the report was hidden until 15 years post-trial. She also names former detective Roy Pond, claiming that he testified that he was ordered to stop investigating 2 weeks after the shooting and later reassigned to jail duty. Let's talk about the prosecutor Fred Huge, who adopted her kids. So in the aftermath, a miracle of sorts happened when the prosecutor Fred Huge adopted her surviving kids. After Diane Downs was convicted in '84, her two surviving children, Christy and Danny, were adopted by Fred, the Lane County prosecutor who tried her case, and his wife Joanne. Now, Fred had spent months working closely with the children's doctors and therapists during the investigation and trial. Christy, who was 9 years old at the time, testified against her mother after recovering from a gunshot wound that left her with a partial paralysis and a speech impediment. The Hugies raised Christy and Danny privately in Oregon, away from media attention. They gave them new stability and protection from further contact with Downs, who has since made repeated public claims that they were manipulated by authorities, accusations the Hugies have never publicly engaged with. Now, even though there's all these accusations by Diane and whatnot of like misconduct and all this, she still like gives props to and respects them for raising her children. Now, she also suggests that he put her in prison to protect the kids and keep the real shooter from finding them again. So just do the math on that one. She also emotionally breaks down and she's like,
"I'm not gonna bash Fred. I'm not gonna bash Fred."
I'm just like, very performative, giving performative. Now, moments later after this, she's still joking around and she's like,
"I guess I'm still codependent, boys. Yeah."
So it's, again, in Diane fashion, you're kind of just along for the roller coaster ride of like, where are we going from moment to moment with her? Now, about her counseling needs and unresolved guilt, let's watch this little clip real quick.
I can tell you one thing. The thing that makes me cry, the only thing about all of this that makes me cry, gut hard cry, is knowing that it was my fault. That's what I would want to deal with. I need to have somebody that I could talk to that would listen to me and would accept the fact, number one, that I'm innocent of shooting, but that I am guilty of putting my children in danger.
Okay. let's just work with her on this one. She's definitely, she's trying to wrap it around to that. And okay, we got you, Diane. Now, as far as the disciplinary history discussion goes of this, it takes up a lot of time, as you can imagine. So I'm going to kind of do an overview of a few that stuck out to me, and then we'll go a little bit deeper on some of them. So there's a 1985 DR contraband drug trafficking situation, and Diane says that a male inmate falsely accused her to deflect his own charges, and she claimed that the letter was forged and that a warden didn't believe her. In 1987 escape, she admits that she left after losing her appeal and said that she intended to find the real shooter and record a confession. She also says that she trusted a woman in prison whose ex-husband offered to help, and she called it stupid and surrendered voluntarily, and claimed that later a man named James Claire Haynes confessed to the actual crime. Now in 1989 we have an attempted escape. She says that she was framed by an admirer named Robert Seaver, who wanted to make a movie about her and sell it to Motown Pictures. When she refused, he fabricated an escape plot involving a helicopter. That sounds like movie stuff enough, right? Now in 1991 we have yet another attempted escape on the board, and she says that a New Jersey prison accused her of planning to disguise herself in a blue romper as a guard. She laughed this off as impossible due to the uniform design and visibility, and she said that, quote, there was nothing to conceal in her tiny cell. Now let's talk about the 1991 escape diagram disciplinary action that she received. So they'll question her about this 1991 report that was like, what's up with this whole thing about you had a diagram that looked like it was the prison layout, this little escape plan that you were doing. Now Diane will be like,
Oh, no, that's nothing. No, that's not what that was. See, as a distressor, when I'm anxious, I'll draw out a house floor plan. It's like a way to relax.
now she'll say she wasn't trying to hide this, it was out in the open, there was no reason to, even escape at this point, and she was like,
What did I do wrong? Draw a house plan? So sue me.
Now they revisit that 1987 escape as well. In 1987, Diane escaped and went to a fellow inmate's ex-husband's house. Now she would stay there and have a bit of a relationship with him, shall we say. He was apparently having some drug problems at the time, and this is what she had to say when the parole board revisits this. So Diane will say that she had the name of the man who she believed shot her kids, and that she went to his associate's house. Now she says that she planned to go to California and admits that she didn't really have a backup plan, and she also admits that,
Yeah, you know what? I left prison like I was over it.
she'll also say that her co-conspirator Louise turned her in like a week later to get back at her ex-husband. So do with that what you will. Now he has a whole different story where he's like, this woman showed up at the house and somebody was like, hey, somebody wants to talk to you, and she's like, hey, can I stay? And he's like, sure. And then he ended up boinking for a week, and he's like, I knew she had to, I should have turned her in, but I didn't. But you notice the theme here. She would have had this man, if she could have concocted it, taking the blame for the kids, right? She knows no low. Now Diane will try and clear up a lot of the confusion surrounding the 1989 helicopter escape plot when they circle back around to this. So they discuss this confusion between John Stevens and John Budke, who Diane says are the same person. Now she will go back over how Robert Seaver, a man who she corresponded with, fabricated an escape story for profit after she refused to sign a movie release or to marry him. Now she would also claim that Seavers admitted later that he and John sold the story for 25 grand and kept the money. Now she'll laugh off this whole notion of an escape to Canada in the first place, which is what this was centered around. She's like, Canada? I don't even like the cold. Now they'll circle around to this whole narrative of conspiracy that surrounds Diane. And one of the panel will actually call this out, and they'll be like, look, all this stuff, the things that you talk about, whether it's escape this, that, contraband, perjury, it doesn't matter, okay? It always comes down to someone else is lying or conspiring against you, okay? This is such a common theme that we see with people like this. It's always someone's out to get me and they take no accountability and they lie and they gaslight. Diane's picture should be next to whatever this is in the dictionary. Now she'll give a really dramatic answer for this, and I'm going to quote her. She'll say, according to the dangerous offender law, I have to be mentally ill for you to keep me here. I sure look crazy, don't I? And honestly, it's like, you kind of do, girl. Now when they talk about the psychological evaluation portion of this, she will praise psychologist Dr. Milky and be like,
Oh, he's a very active listener. Very good. Very good.
Although she does disagree, okay, she's going to have to disagree, that this whole narcissistic personality disorder thing, she's like, I'm not on board with that. Now for the big mama jama whammy jammy of this, she retells the 1983 shooting. What happened that fateful evening, right? She's told many versions over the years. So let's see what it is this time. So she'll say that she left home to deliver a newspaper clipping about horse adoption to a coworker, Heather. After visiting while driving home with her 3 children, she claims a stranger flags her down. He allegedly demands the car, pushes her aside, and shot the children. Then she'll say that she faked tossing her keys and that she was shot, although she didn't know it at the time. And then this is when she drives them to the hospital, right? So this is essentially kind of like what she initially went with. If you'll recall during this, when this popped off, she even did like, well, not really, she did lots of interviews, but they did a reenactment on tape and she's like going through the motions. Now remember, she shot herself in the arm to make it look like something happened. And she'll say that, oh, I thought he hit me with the gun at the time. Well, when she's showing the cops how she did this, she's laughing, she's joking, you know, she bumps her arm, get out of the car, she's like, oh, and she almost says, this hurts almost as bad as when and then she stops. And she almost let it out then, right? The thing with Diane that's so frustrating and angering is the lies are so obvious. And it's so frustrating to see someone a decade after decade dig their heels in and lie to everyone's face with it, the obviousness of it out there. Like, it's so plainly obvious what took place, right? Doesn't matter that her kid's gonna get on the stand and testify. None of this matters. She is going to double down and lie her way through it. And not only lie, but come up with a massive conspiracy around it. Like, it's not even just like a little simple lie about it. It's like, girl, which story are we going with? Okay, and then the stories that go beyond that, it's just like, how did we arrive here? Now they'll circle back around to like this, you know, focus on the real shooter. Now she goes back to this James Hayes guy, and again she cites, you know, the alleged confession to families, friends, all this stuff. Now her attorney will interject and support this and say that there's multiple affidavits that exist that this issue was raised in federal habeas filings in the late 90s, and that current DNA testing is tied to those claims. Now on that note, let's talk about the DNA and the alternate suspect questions that come up. So Downs' attorney stated that a DNA motion is being prepared. The attorney described the evidence as part of ongoing post-conviction litigation and suggests that samples or results that were not previously available, and hopes that this will show the truth of what really happened that night. Now Downs has long asserted the shooting of her children was done by someone else. Now the board's going to reference her older statements about this John Kruger and Michael Hart being the same man, and DNA on gum and beer cans, and Diane will be like,
oh no, hold on. Those were questions, those weren't accusations, okay?
And she'll even speculate that there's probably multiple people at the scene, given like the shoe prints and evidence items, all that kind of stuff that was found. Now let's talk about one of the most heartbreaking parts of this, the numerous heartbreaking things, and that's her daughter's testimony at her trial. Remember, the daughter is like, yeah, mom did it. So let's see what they had to say about that. At Diane Downs' 1984 trial, her surviving daughter Christy, who is just 9 years old, gave powerful testimony that became the emotional centerpiece of the case. Christy had been shot in the chest during the attack, leaving her partially paralyzed and with a speech impediment. After months of therapy, she was finally able to speak clearly enough to testify. And on the stand, when the prosecutor gently asked who shot her, Christy pointed to her mother and said, my mom. Now, when the board's like, how do we explain this girl? Like, okay, what are we gonna say about this? She'll say that her daughter had no memory and hospital notes. She'll blame the police and psychologists for coercive interrogation tactics. She'll also say that Christy was unaware of Diane's claim about another shooter until the trial. Then she'll also say that Christy's like little police sketch or whatever depicted a left-hand shooter when she, meaning Diane, is right-handed. Now there's this whole other pesky thing about Diane claiming that she has a stalker and that she was removed from college. She was like in college in prison. Let's talk about that. So according to her, the stalking began shortly after her conviction in 1984 and has continued intermittently ever since. She says the stalker has followed her between prisons, interfered with her correspondence, and even sabotaged opportunities like her removal from a college program while incarcerated. It's always interesting that these personality types will always come up with this stalker thing. It's absolutely insane, and that she's going to sit here and blame so many of her problems on a stalker while she's in prison. It's like, girl, you're not hard to find. Now she revisits this in the whole thing, and she'll even go and be like, she'll speculate and say, I think I was removed from the college program without warning, without any reason, because he was like calling and making making threats and whatnot. And she'll say this, and I'll quote her: "He's not stalking me to benefit me. He's doing things that make them concerned about me." Now they circle back to the whole accountability thing. We kind of touched on this earlier. And they're just like, okay, now look, could you tell us, is there any part of this that you actually take accountability for? And she'll pull a Donna, she'll be like,
Well, I'm gonna get a little emotional here, okay?
she does say, you know what? I take accountability for being there that night. She regrets stopping to help the stranger. She regrets taking the kids out that night. And then she says, and I'll quote her, "I did stop on that road. I did get smart with him. I was there and my children were with me. That's my accountability." Now there's also the whole pesky thing about her allegedly confessing in a letter. In 1984, prosecutors claimed that Diane Downs wrote a letter to her defense attorney that amounted to a partial confession to the shootings. According to the state, the letter described how she had been flirting with a man, had marijuana in her car, and that the man had used her gun to shoot her children. Essentially, an admission that connected her to both the weapon and the scene. The prosecutor argued it showed guilt and motive. Now, Diane will flatly deny this and circle back around to the prosecutor, Fred Huge. She'll say that the letter was forged and it was timed after a hearing where that prosecutor defended her parental rights, saying he was the only one who didn't want to terminate them. She also argued that there'd be no motive to write a letter that would destroy the one person who believed in me. She says her attorney later gave her 5 boxes of case files and that the letter was not in there. Now let's circle back around to the whole narcissism debate with her. When they ask her about this and the diagnosis of her narcissistic personality disorder, and they'll ask her, like, does she see that in herself? And then she has this to say. So she'll say she doesn't even meet the criteria for grandiosity or need for admiration. Girl, no. She also attributes that label to media attention. Quote, "There was a movie and a book, but I didn't do those." She says she refused to cooperate with the author Anne Rule and the screenwriter of Small Sacrifices and never signed releases. She also claims that her only reason for talking to reporters early on was to reach her children, not for publicity. And she says, quote, "I just wanted my kids to know their mommy still loved them." Whatever. Now, in one of her best gaslighting lines here, when they start talking about like the breaking down the whole grandiosity versus awareness, they ask her about this and like the whole grandiosity thing, and she says that she's not that, she's simply alert, not arrogant. I feel like that needs to be a t-shirt. I'm simply alert. I'm not arrogant. I'm alert. Very alert. Now, there's also an FBI letter from 2020 that's a whole bunch of controversy surrounding that. So let's see what they have to say about that. So the board confronts her with that whole 2020 letter that she sent to the FBI, alleging that Oregon's Director of Corrections once told her in 2016 he'd been, quote, instructed by an external agency how to handle her parole. Now she says,
That's true. I still have the original letter.
now she says that she kept it and she sent it to the FBI, but then she's like,
I'm not going to tell you where it's at. I don't want someone to come and take it.
sure, Jan. Now, of course, they have to go through the whole motions of like, what would you do if you got paroled? What are your plans? So let's talk about how that played out. So in the matter of housing, employment, finances, if she were to actually get out. So she lists 3 housing options. So her brother James and his wife Mary, they have a U-shaped duplex in a rural cliffside location with a private 2-bedroom suite for her. She also has her mother's home. Her mother calls 3 times weekly asking, why aren't you at my front door yet? Now she also has her sister Kate and her wife, who both offered to host her. She says all these people are very stable, they're homeowners, and that once Diane can get out and get situated, she's going to be, you know, like a functioning member of society and a contributing member. And she even says, she's like,
look, I'm a fire sign. I can't just sit and watch no TV, okay? I want to get out. I want to work. I want to do stuff.
Now she says she could be a Walmart greeter, she could work at Jack in the Box, she could do legal work, she could do paralegal work, all this kind of stuff. She's like, I've been doing that paralegal and legal work for basically my whole life trying to get out of this mess. Now there's also the whole SSI/disability confusion that took place, because earlier she's like,
Oh no, I'm going to get paid. Okay, you know the inmates get like a whole bunch of money if they're older and they get out?
well, no. Okay, that was not correct. So the board goes in and presses her about this whole mention of $100,000 SSI payout. And Diane admits that she might have misunderstood this, and she says that an inmate named Nathan told her about the compensation for time served. Now, she believes what's actually real is Social Security Disability Income, SSDI, for elderly parolees. This is about $1,700 a month initially, and recipients must repay it once employed. Now, she says, look,
I don't want to rely on no no disability, okay? But the parole board wants to see, stability, so I went ahead and listed it.
Now, then they talk about like the resident safety. Like, what is it going to be like if you move into one of these places? And she confirms things like, yeah, there's like no weapons at my brother's house. You know, there's no minors. She's secluded, this, that, and the other. And if there's family dinners, because again, that she can't have contact with victims and stuff like this, she's like, you know what? We already talked about it. I'll go get a hotel. I'll stay away. Everything will be cool. Then, of course, with Diane comes the whole media attention. They're like, girl, what are we going to do with you in the media? She says, I have no desire to interact with the media. I have nothing for them. And by the way, could you please redact my brother's home address, because I don't even want that out there. Speaking of her brother, he gives some testimony. So he calls by phone and he confirms a lot of what Diane was saying. She'll have permanent housing and support. His property has that private suite, which is completely vacant and open. There's no guns or children in the house, and he'll ensure that she has 100% success in re-entering society. Now, when the prosecution closes out, they're basically like, absolutely not. She's a danger. Leave her locked up and throw away the key. Now, of course, the defense is going to go for a different angle. They want her to get out, right? So this is what they had to say. So the attorney outlines that, look, this isn't about proving innocence. It's about a fair review of her record and rehabilitation. He cites also how Diane's case is very unique because she has maintained her innocence this whole time. He also cites media attention and speculation, as well as gender bias. And he also acknowledges like her outspoken stuff and whatnot. He's like, it's absolutely hurt her image and whatnot, but it doesn't mean she's guilty. And I'm going to quote him. He says, she talks too much. She's argumentative. She's a fighter, but that doesn't mean she's dangerous. We'll come back to that one, okay? Now, he'll also outline her positive prison record. So he'll talk about how she's had no major infractions in 20 years, that she has widespread staff support, and then they offer up strong letters from inmates and community members. Now, he'll critique the past diagnoses that have been placed upon her, but he'll also praise Dr. Megan McNeil's new evaluation, saying, oh no, nope, she ain't narcissistic. Nope, not one bit. There's just something else wrong with that one. She didn't say all that, but she did say that she's not narcissistic. So he'll say, you know, wrapping it up, he's like, she's been in prison for 42 years. She's kind, she's optimistic, she's not self-pitying, and she deserves fair consideration. So those are all the major highlights of what came out of it that I wanted to talk about. My opinion personally, honey, they ain't letting her out. It's so obvious what she's doing. She shot the kids, she drove slowly to the hospital, and then she went on like a public like outspoken, I don't even know what you want to call it, like a media blitz. She enjoyed it. She was flirty. She was laughing. It was a complete joke to her. Honestly, I think the children would not even be, those surviving ones wouldn't even be alive today. If she had gotten away with that and been able to like keep raising them, she would have killed them at some point. To me, Diane Downs is somebody who children are like a prop, a narcissistic prop to her. And when they grow up, like out of the, when they become, you know, more complicated, I guess you could say, they're not the cute little babies. They're not this, they're very disposable and probably would end up looking like paychecks to her, right? The attention that she got with this, can you imagine pulling your car over, taking a gun and looking your children in the face and shooting them? And then with their whimpering and probably death rattles and all sorts of stuff, driving as slow as you possibly could to the hospital and then laughing and joking and talking about my new car has blood smeared in it. Make it make sense, right? Every interview from the past, you see she's laughing, she's smiling, she's this. It sends bone chills throughout me when I see her. The face of pure evil. So personally, I don't think they're going to let her out. I don't think they're ever going to let her out. You can see right through her stuff. I mean, even with the accountability, they're just like, are you responsible for any part of this? Well, I shouldn't have had them out that night. You know, and it's just like, would I wonder if they would let her out if she had said many decades ago, I killed them. It was horrible what I did. I'm a terrible human being, but I want to change my life and do something better for society. Possibly, I don't know. I doubt it. It's a really horrific crime that she did. So I don't know if you would ever really get out on that one, but I think she would have a lot better chance had she admitted what she did. The level of lying that she does and making up stuff is so insane. And I think one thing that she does is she's clearly lived an entire life behind bars. So she's run into characters. And I think she runs into people who she'll try and victimize herself, or she knows she can like make up a story about things that no one can technically ever put their hands on or fact check or get to the heart of it because it's a complete lie. Like, she's made stuff up, like the FBI letter. Well, I'm not going to tell anybody where it's at. Well, honey, how many places could it be? None of it makes sense. It's such an obvious lie. I just don't even know where you go from there. So I do not think they'll ever let her out. Like I said, I'd be shocked if they did. I'd be shocked if they did. So I think they go through these motions, however many years it is, and she'll go through them again, and she'll say the same stuff, and she'll circle back around to this stuff, and she'll pick up little pieces about it and put the story together a little bit more, and maybe eventually she'll just stop trying, right? Again, at this stage in the game, the fact that her mother and that her brother, she has these people in her life that are willing to accept her in, I would be curious to know if her family believes her story, or if they're just like, it's been so long, let's get you home. I don't know, but she's lucky to have their support. So anyways, I know this is kind of long. I do appreciate it if you're still watching, and if you are still watching, well, first of all, let me know what you think. Do you think she'll ever get out? Curious to know, and drop it in the comments. While you are in the comments, drop it off that answer, which I'm guessing is going to be a no. Call me psychic. But while you're down there in the comment section, if you could pretty please drop some little sofas and pillows off for myself, Roscoe and Spirit, the pups who are over there in their little heating blanket, and you, the Sofa Squad, the most important. You make the channel possible. It wouldn't be here without you. I greatly appreciate it. And until we meet down in that comment section, do all that stuff we just talked about, I'll see y'all soon.
I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now, don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Roscoe on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.
Hey, welcome to the Sofa Squad. Sipping from the cup that hey, come laugh with the Sofa Squad. Can't roll my damn eyes hard enough.